Zuberi was a boy like no other in the small, dusty village of Kinuba. Everyone knew him for his gentle heart and bright smile. Even as a child, he carried a sense of purpose, always running errands for the elders, helping neighbors with their farming, and taking care of his mother, Mama Adina, with a devotion that melted hearts. He had no fancy toys or clothes, but he had big dreams. While other boys talked about becoming hunters or traders, Zuberi always said, "I want to be a doctor." His eyes would light up every time he spoke those words. He dreamed of healing the sick, of opening a small clinic in Kinuba where people wouldn't have to walk for miles just to get medicine. His love for Mama Adina was deeper than words. She was his world. He believed everything she told him. After his father died, when he was just a toddler, Zuberi took it upon himself to become the man of the house. He worked in the fields, carried water from the river, and even sold handmade crafts in the village market, anything to bring home a few coins. And he never complained, not even once. Whenever he felt tired or hungry, he'd just look at his mother and say, "One day, Mama, I'll buy you a big house with white walls and a soft bed." He trusted her blindly, and to him, every sacrifice was worth it, because he believed she was sacrificing just as much for him. One hot afternoon, Mama Adina called Zuberi into their small kitchen hut. She looked tired, her eyes heavy with something she wasn't saying. "Zuberi," she began, trying to smile. "There's a man in Makolo City. He's rich. He can help you. He promised to support your studies." Zuberi's heart jumped. His dream of becoming a doctor suddenly felt closer. "You mean I can go to school in the city?" he asked, barely believing it. She nodded. "Yes, my son. It's for your future." What Zuberi didn't know was that his mother had made a painful deal behind his back. Months ago, desperate and drowning in debt, Mama Adina had taken money from a wealthy landowner in Makolo. She promised something in return, not crops, not cattle, but her own son's labor. She knew it was wrong, but the pressure had been too much. Collectors had been banging on her door. The shame of losing their small piece of land haunted her. So, she signed the deal. In her heart, she told herself it was only for a little while, only until she could pay the money back. But deep down, she feared it might be forever. When the day came, Zuberi packed his few clothes and hugged her tight. "I'll make you proud, Mama," he whispered. She nodded, but couldn't meet his eyes. Her heart was breaking. She watched him climb onto the truck, waving until he disappeared into the dust. She stood alone, silent, her hands trembling. She had not just sent her son away, she had given him away. And Zuberi, full of hope and trust, had no idea that the journey he thought would lead him to school was actually leading him into a trap. When Zuberi arrived in Makolo City, his heart was full of dreams. He had never seen such tall buildings, busy roads, and shiny cars. It felt like another world, loud, fast, and full of promise. He held his small bag close and looked around for the man who was supposed to take him to school. A driver picked him up and took him to a large house with big gates and marble floors. "Maybe this is where I'll stay before classes start," he thought, his heart beating with excitement. But that night, no one spoke of school. Instead, they handed him a broom. "Start cleaning the hallway," said a sharp voice. Confused, Zuberi did as he was told. He thought maybe it was just a temporary task. But the next day and the next week, he was given more chores. Sweeping, mopping, washing clothes, cooking, and even scrubbing toilets. Soon it became clear, he wasn't there to study, he was there to work. Zuberi tried to stay hopeful. He wrote letters to Mama Adina, pouring his heart out. "Mama, something's wrong. I'm not going to school. They make me clean all day. Please help me." He sent letter after letter. No reply. Days turned into weeks. Still nothing. He borrowed a phone once. Tried calling. The number was blocked. That's when the truth hit him. She had shut him out. His world crumbled. The one person he trusted most had turned her back on him. The dream of becoming a doctor felt like a joke now. Every morning he woke up to shouting voices and cold floors. Every night he cried silently, staring at the ceiling, wondering why. Why would his mother do this to him? Why had she lied? Zuberi stopped writing. He stopped asking questions. A part of him died inside. The hopeful part. All he had left was survival. And even that wasn't easy in a place where he was treated like he didn't matter. Zuberi stayed in that big house in Makolo for 6 long years. Every single day was the same. waking up before sunrise, cleaning the floors, scrubbing the bathrooms, cooking meals he wasn't allowed to eat, and getting shouted at for the smallest mistakes. He was treated like he didn't have a voice, like he didn't even exist. Some days, the insults hurt more than the work. "You're just a village boy," they would say. "Be grateful you even have a roof over your head." But Zuberi never gave up inside. His body was tired, but his mind refused to die. Every time he took out the trash, he checked the garbage for something special. Old books. Some had missing pages, some were torn, but he didn't care. He collected them in secret and hid them under the mattress in the small storeroom where he slept. Most of the books were school notebooks, used textbooks, or random pages with notes. He didn't understand much at first. The English was hard, but slowly, day by day, word by word, he started to teach himself. Late at night, after all the lights in the house were off, Zuberi would light a small candle and read. He copied words, repeated sentences, and even tried drawing human bones and organs from old science notes. He didn't have a teacher. He didn't have anyone to explain, but he had a fire inside him, the same fire that once made him dream of becoming a doctor. Over the years, he taught himself how to read, how to speak better English, and even how the human body worked. He began to understand medicine, little by little. He memorized names of diseases, symptoms, treatments, anything he could find. Knowledge became his secret power, his way of fighting back without anyone knowing. No one in that house saw the boy who was growing stronger inside. They only saw the servant. But behind the broom, behind the quiet face, Zuberi was slowly building a future. He never got a reply from his mother, not once. But he told himself, "If I survive this, I will never let anyone control my life again." It was a stormy night in Makolo, the kind of night when even the city lights looked scared. Rain poured from the sky like the heavens were crying. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and lightning lit up the streets. Inside the mansion, everyone was asleep. Zuberi sat in the storage room, heart pounding. His clothes were soaked from a leaky roof, and his stomach growled with hunger. But in that moment, all he could think about was one thing: freedom. He had planned this for weeks. He knew the routine, the sounds of the house, the times people slept. That night, he took a deep breath, opened the back door quietly, and stepped out into the rain. His bare feet touched the cold, wet ground. His heart raced. Every step felt like a risk, but also like a step toward a new life. He didn't know where he was going. He just knew he couldn't stay another day in that prison. He ran through alleyways and dark streets, hiding behind trees and cars whenever he heard voices. He had no money, no food, not even a jacket, but he had something more powerful: hope. His clothes stuck to his skin, and his legs ached, but he didn't stop. Not until he collapsed near a small building with a sign that read, "Makolo Community Library." The next morning, an old woman found him shivering outside the library steps. Her name was Mama Kendi. She had kind eyes and a voice that felt like warmth. "Oh, my child, what happened to you?" she asked, kneeling beside him. Zuberi tried to speak, but only tears came out. She didn't ask too many questions. She just took him inside, wrapped him in a blanket, and gave him warm tea and bread. That night, for the first time in years, Zuberi slept without fear. Mama Kendi gave him a corner in the back of the library to rest. When he finally told her his story, she held his hand and said, "You are safe now, and you are not alone anymore." Zuberi didn't have a home. He didn't have a family. But in that little library, soaked in books and kindness, he found something just as powerful: a second chance. Zuberi's new life began in the quiet corners of Mama Kendi's library. It wasn't much, just a mattress behind the bookshelf and a small lamp, but to him it felt like a palace. Mama Kendi became like the mother he had always dreamed of. She didn't just give him shelter and food, she gave him belief. "You're not broken, Zuberi," she told him one night. "You've just been buried. Now it's time to grow." Every evening, after the library closed, Zuberi would sit at a desk with a pile of old books. Mama Kendi helped him get proper textbooks and notebooks. He studied like his life depended on it, because it did. Biology, chemistry, English grammar, medical terms. He soaked in every word. He asked questions, wrote notes, and stayed up late under the soft light, chasing the dream he once thought was dead. During the day, he worked at a nearby pharmacy. The owner, Mr. Chola, was strict, but fair. Zuberi cleaned shelves, carried boxes, and slowly earned his trust. Soon, he was allowed to help customers, read prescriptions, and learn about medicines. It was like his two worlds, study and work, were finally connecting. Every tablet he touched, every illness he read about, made him feel closer to his dream of becoming a doctor. One afternoon, Mama Kendi came into the library holding a newspaper. "Zuberi, look, there's a scholarship exam next month for Lusaka Medical Institute." His hands shook as he read the details. It felt impossible, but also like fate. He studied harder than ever, barely sleeping, pushing himself to remember every formula, every answer. On the day of the exam, he wore the cleanest shirt he had and walked into the hall with nothing but faith. Weeks later, a letter arrived. He opened it slowly, heart racing, and there it was. He had passed. He had won the scholarship. Zuberi dropped to his knees, tears falling freely. Mama Kendi hugged him tight, crying too. "You did it, my son," she whispered. That day, Zuberi didn't just get into medical school. He proved that no matter how broken your beginning is, you can still rise, rewrite your story, and shine. 10 years had passed since Zuberi had left Kinuba, a scared, hopeful boy with nothing but dreams in his pocket. Now he was returning, not as a servant, not as a forgotten son, but as Dr. Zuberi Mbele. The dirt roads looked the same, the fields still danced with wind, and the old trees still whispered village stories. But Zuberi had changed. He wore a white coat over his shoulders and carried something far greater than pride, purpose. Word spread quickly. "Zuberi is back. He's a doctor now." The whole village gathered near the main square. Women ululated, children ran barefoot to greet him, and the elders blessed him with their hands on his head. They couldn't believe the same boy who once sold hand-woven baskets in the market was now the founder of the Free Village Clinics project, bringing doctors and medicine to forgotten places like Kinuba. People hugged him, cried, laughed, and thanked him. Zuberi smiled through it all, but his eyes kept looking at one house, the one with the old rusted door at the edge of the village, his childhood home, the place where it had all started. But that door stayed shut. Inside, Mama Adina stood behind a curtain, watching everything from a distance. Her hands trembled. She had heard of his success, read his name in newspapers, seen his face on TV, but she never imagined he would come back here, not after what she had done. She couldn't bring herself to face him. She saw the celebration, the joy, the respect he had earned, all without her. She had wanted to give him a better life, or so she once told herself, but deep down, she knew she had betrayed him. And now, the boy she had once sold to save herself had returned. A man, a healer, a hero. Zuberi didn't knock on her door. He simply stood still, looked at the house for a long moment, and then turned back toward the crowd. There were patients to see, children to check, lives to heal. Kinuba had welcomed him home. But his mother? She stayed hidden in silence, behind the same walls that once sent him away. The sun was bright over Kinuba as the villagers gathered for a big event in the schoolyard. A stage had been set up with chairs, microphones, and colourful banners that read, "Welcome Dr. Zuberi Mbele, our son, our hero." Children sang songs, women clapped their hands, elders gave speeches filled with pride. It was a celebration not just of Zuberi's success, but of hope itself. Zuberi sat quietly, listening, smiling politely. He was grateful, but also heavy with emotions he couldn't show. Then came the moment that changed everything. A young journalist from the city stood up, holding a microphone. She smiled and asked, "Dr. Zuberi, you've spoken about your journey, your work, and your dreams, but we want to know, what about your parents? What role did they play in your success?" The question hit him like a wave. For a moment, Zuberi looked down at his hands. The crowd went quiet, waiting. The wind stopped. Even the children stopped fidgeting. He took a deep breath and slowly stood up. He looked straight ahead and said, "Some people give you life." His voice cracked a little, but he didn't stop. "And others teach you how to live without them." The crowd stood frozen. No one moved. No one spoke. The air felt thick with emotion. Everyone knew who he was talking about. Everyone knew Mama Adina was not in the crowd. Zuberi continued, "I don't stand here today because my path was easy. I stand here because I refuse to let pain decide my future. My story is not just about success, it's about survival. People nodded slowly, some with tears in their eyes. A few looked toward the road that led to his mother's house. Zuberi didn't name her, didn't point fingers, but his words cut deeper than any blame ever could. The applause came slowly, then louder, but even in the celebration, there was a quiet sadness in the air, a reminder that not all wounds heal with time, and not every reunion comes with hugs. That day, Zuberi didn't just speak for himself. He spoke for every child who had been let down by the ones they trusted most, and still chose to rise. The next morning, after the public event, Mama Adina sent a message through a neighbor. "Please," it said, "tell him I want to see him, just once." Her hands shook as she wrote it. She hadn't slept all night. Zuberi's words had echoed in her ears again and again. She had watched the event from behind a tree at the edge of the crowd, hiding, crying, aching with regret. Zuberi didn't reply at first. He spent the day at the clinic, treating villagers, listening to their problems, giving medicine and comfort, but his heart felt heavy. That night, after sunset, he walked quietly to his childhood home. The old door creaked just like he remembered. He knocked once. Mama Adina opened the door slowly, her eyes swollen from crying. She looked older than he remembered, thinner, weaker, smaller somehow. For a moment, she just stared at him, as if trying to believe he was real. Then she fell to her knees and cried, "Zuberi, my son, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I didn't know what else to do. I was desperate. Please, forgive me." Her voice was broken, full of guilt. Tears ran down her face as she reached for his hand. But Zuberi didn't move. He looked at her quietly, then said in a soft, steady voice, "I forgive you, but I'm not the same boy you betrayed." She sobbed harder, holding his feet, but he gently stepped back. "I survived," he said. "I found my way, but you weren't there. Not when I needed you most." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The pain in his words said everything. Mama Adina begged, "Give me a chance to make it right. Let me be your mother again." But Zuberi just shook his head. "A mother doesn't disappear when life gets hard," he replied. "You gave me life, but someone else gave me love." And with that, he turned and walked away. She stood there, crying into her hands, watching him vanish into the night. Her heart was breaking, but it was too late. Her apology came like rain after a fire, but the damage had already been done. Some wounds leave scars, even after forgiveness. Zuberi's story didn't stay in Kinuba. It traveled from village to city, from country to country. News reporters wrote about the village boy who had once been sold like a servant, but rose to become one of Africa's most respected doctors. Photos of him in his white coat, standing beside smiling patients in remote villages, were shared all over the internet. People were amazed, not just by his work, but by the pain he had turned into purpose. He was invited to speak at big conferences. Universities gave him awards. Even international health organizations honored him for his free village clinics project, which had helped thousands of poor families across rural Africa. Cameras flashed, crowds clapped, and every time he stood on a stage, holding a golden plaque or medal, he would smile softly and say, "This is not just for me. This is for all the children who were betrayed, but never gave up." People cried when they heard him speak. His words were simple, but they hit deep. He never told the full details of what happened to him, but his eyes always carried the weight of those lost years. Still, he never spoke with anger, only with strength. One day, during a big award ceremony in Nairobi, a journalist asked him, "What gave you the strength to keep going?" Zuberi looked out at the crowd and said, "Sometimes, the people who break you also build you, without meaning to. I didn't succeed in spite of the betrayal. I succeeded because of it." That was fate's final surprise. What was meant to destroy him had actually shaped him. His greatest wound had become his greatest power. And through it all, he never lost his heart, only found it.